The stars had been peaceful for 3,000 years. The Galactic Confederation made sure of that. Every species knew their place, every trade route was protected, and every conflict was solved with words instead of weapons. They ruled the military side of things. Their ships glowed with bright energy weapons that could cut through anything. Their shields sparkled like diamonds in space, stopping any attack that came their way. Admiral of the High Council was proud of his people's strength. They had earned their position as the galaxy's protectors through centuries of careful planning and superior technology. They controlled all the trade. Their massive cargo ships moved goods between star systems like clockwork. They were good at making money and even better at avoiding fights. Their leader, Trade Master N, believed that credits were more powerful than cannons. They were different from the others. They looked like living crystals that hummed when they thought. Their computers were in the galaxy. They could solve problems that would take other species years to figure out. They spoke in mathematical formulas and saw everything as data to be processed. These three powers, along with dozens of smaller species, had built something beautiful together. Wars were ancient history. Disputes were handled by committees. The galaxy had learned to live in harmony. Then the humans showed up. The first human ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Confederation territory on a Tuesday. The ship was small and looked rough around the edges. Its hull was made of simple metal instead of the energy-resistant materials most species used. The weapons were basic projectile launchers that fired solid chunks of metal. Even the engines looked old-fashioned, burning chemical fuel like something from a museum. Ambassador received the first contact report while drinking his morning energy brew. He read it twice, thinking there might be a mistake. The human ship was using radio waves to communicate. Radio waves. Most species had stopped using such primitive technology thousands of years ago. The ship was called the UES Endeavor. Its captain was a human female named Sarah Martinez. She seemed friendly enough when opened communications. Her species looked remarkably similar to several others in the galaxy: 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head, and skin that changed colors slightly based on emotion. "Greetings from Earth," Captain Martinez said with a wide smile. "We're excited to meet our galactic neighbors. We've been hopping for this day for a very long time." Followed standard first contact procedures. He welcomed the humans to Confederation space and invited them to dock at Nexus Prime, the neutral station where new species learned about galactic civilization. The humans accepted with enthusiasm that seemed almost childlike to the experienced ambassador. During the formal first contact ceremony, Captain Martinez presented gifts from Earth. There were samples of human art, music, and literature. The aliens found it all quite primitive but charming. The humans had included weapons too, but they were simple chemical projectile launchers that wouldn't scratch modern armor. "Your species shows promise," told Captain Martinez during their private meeting. "But you have much to learn about galactic technology and politics. The universe can be dangerous for those who aren't prepared." Captain Martinez nodded seriously. "We understand, Ambassador. Earth is still young compared to your great civilizations. We hope to learn from your wisdom and experience." The Confederation Council met to discuss humanity's application for membership. The debate was brief and polite. The humans seemed nice enough, but their technology was clearly centuries behind galactic standards. They would need time to catch up before they could be considered equals. "We should grant them probationary observer status," suggested council leader of the Aquatic Collective. "They can watch and learn while we handle the real business of governing the galaxy." The vote was unanimous. Humanity would be welcomed as junior members of galactic society. They could establish an embassy, attend council meetings as observers, and gradually work their way up to full membership over the next few decades. Ambassador delivered the news to Captain Martinez personally. He expected disappointment or frustration. Instead, The human captain smiled even wider. "That's wonderful news, Ambassador. Earth is honored to begin this relationship with the Confederation. We promise to be good students and helpful neighbors." Over the following months, more human ships arrived in Confederation space. They were all built with the same basic technology: metal hulls, chemical engines, and kinetic weapons. The humans established their embassy on Nexus Prime and began learning about galactic society with impressive dedication. Human diplomats attended every council meeting. They asked good questions and took careful notes. They seemed genuinely interested in understanding how the galaxy worked. Their ambassador, Director Sarah, was particularly well liked for her diplomatic skills and sense of humor. The humans also proved to be excellent traders. They offered unique goods from their home system, foods with complex flavors, artistic works with emotional depth, and entertainment that other species found surprisingly engaging. In return, they purchased basic technologies and raw materials. What impressed the Confederation most was human adaptability. They learned new languages quickly. They adjusted to different environments without complaint. They even modified their own technology to work better with galactic standards. Within 6 months, human ships were using proper hyperspace communicators and improved life support systems. "They're eager students," Trade Master N noted during one council session. "Perhaps a bit too eager. They ask a lot of questions about military technology and industrial capacity." Ambassador waved off the concern. "Natural curiosity. Young species always want to understand how their betters achieved greatness. It's harmless." They had run detailed scans on human technology and biology. Their analysis confirmed what everyone already knew: humans were a typical developing species, with standard mammalian psychology and basic industrial capabilities. Nothing to worry about. What none of them realized was that every human ship in Confederation space was carefully designed to appear primitive. The real human technology remained hidden on the far side of the galaxy, where Earth's true industrial might was building something the Confederation had never imagined. The humans were learning, all right, but they weren't learning to catch up to galactic civilization. They were learning its weaknesses. The trouble started in the outer systems, where civilization grew thin and old hatred still burned. The hegemony had always been a problem, but they used to keep their violence among themselves. They were a warrior species that believed strength was the only truth that mattered. Their ships were ugly and brutal, covered in spikes and painted with the bones of their enemies. For generations, they had stayed in their corner of space, fighting endless wars among their own clans. The Confederation tolerated them because they mostly left civilized species alone. Occasionally, a raiding party would attack a merchant ship or mining station, but these incidents were rare and quickly forgotten. Then something changed. The first major attack happened on a Thursday. 15 ships hit a cargo convoy near the system. Instead of taking what they wanted and leaving, the raiders destroyed everything. They killed the crews even after they surrendered. They broadcast recordings of the massacre across local communication networks, laughing as they showed off their trophies. Trade Master N was furious when he heard the news. "This is unacceptable behavior, even for They've broken the ancient agreements about honorable raiding." The Confederation Council called an emergency session. Ambassador stood before the assembly, his energy field flickering with controlled anger. "They have clearly decided to abandon all pretense of civilization. We must respond with appropriate force." But the response was anything but forceful. The council voted to impose economic sanctions on the hegemony. They also sent a strongly worded diplomatic message expressing their disappointment. Finally, they positioned a small patrol fleet near space as a deterrent. Everyone knew the deterrent was meaningless. The Confederation had grown soft during 3,000 years of peace. Their ships were beautiful and their weapons were precise, but their crews had never fought a real battle. though on the other hand had been fighting their entire lives. The raids continued and grew worse. A research station was completely destroyed, with all 130 scientists killed. A passenger liner was captured, and they sold the survivors into slavery. Mining colonies were burned to the ground for no reason except to cause fear. Each attack brought the same response from the Confederation: more meetings, more sanctions, more diplomatic protests. The mighty fleet remained in port, its commanders unwilling to risk their beautiful ships against primitive barbarians. They pulled their cargo vessels back to safer routes, complaining about lost profits but unwilling to fight for them. Director Sarah attended every emergency council session. She sat quietly in the human observer section, taking notes and asking occasional questions. Her face showed no emotion as the other ambassadors argued about proper responses and legal procedures. After the seventh major attack, Director finally spoke up. "If I may suggest," she said during a brief pause in the debate, "Earth would be willing to assist with peacekeeping operations. We understand the Confederation's reluctance to use violence, but sometimes force is the only language bullies understand." The chamber fell silent. Ambassador looked at the human representative with something between surprise and amusement. "Director, we appreciate your species' enthusiasm, but this situation requires experienced military forces with advanced technology. Perhaps it would be better for humanity to observe and learn from how civilized species handle such matters." Director nodded politely. "Of course, Ambassador, we defer to your superior experience in these matters." But privately was already sending encrypted messages to Earth. The messages used a communication method the Confederation had never seen before: quantum entanglement transmitters that sent information instantly across any distance. The technology was completely invisible to Confederation sensors. Earth's response came within hours. Admiral of the Terran Defense Force reviewed the intelligence reports that human agents had been gathering for months. The data painted a clear picture of tactics, technology, and weaknesses. More importantly, it revealed the Confederation's complete inability to respond to actual military threats. "Begin Phase 2, Admiral ordered. It's time to reveal just enough truth to be helpful." The worst attack came 3 weeks later. They launched a massive assault on a mixed-species colony in the Deneb system. 200,000 civilians lived on the planet, including families from dozens of different species. The fleet surrounded the world and began orbital bombardment, targeting schools and hospitals along with military installations. Among the dead were 47 human civilians, teachers, doctors, and engineers who had come to Deneb to help build the colony's infrastructure. Their deaths were broadcast across human communication networks, sparking outrage on Earth and its growing number of colony worlds. Director requested an immediate audience with the Confederation Council. She stood before the assembled ambassadors, her usual diplomatic smile replaced by cold determination. "They have killed human citizens," she announced. "Earth formally requests permission to deploy military assets to protect our people and assist in restoring order to the region." Ambassador's energy field dimmed with what looked like sympathy. "Director, we understand your anger, but humanity simply lacks the military capability to face the threat. Your ships would be destroyed before they could fire a shot. Please, let those with experience handle this situation." "How exactly are you handling it?" Director asked quietly. The question hung in the air like a challenge. For 3,000 years, the Confederation had solved problems through discussion and compromise. They had forgotten how to fight, and everyone in the chamber knew it. Council leader cleared his throat. "We are considering stronger measures. The Third Fleet has been placed on alert status." "And when will this fleet actually move against the—" The silence stretched uncomfortably. Finally, Admiral spoke. "They are still developing appropriate tactical responses. Military action requires careful planning and— While you plan, more people die, Director interrupted, her diplomatic composure cracking slightly, including human citizens who trusted the Confederation to protect them. She looked around the chamber, making eye contact with each ambassador. Earth withdraws its request for permission. We'll handle this ourselves. The human representative left the council chamber, her footsteps echoing in the stunned silence. Behind her, the galaxy's most powerful leaders began to realize that their members might not be as helpless as they appeared. In space above Earth, massive construction yards that had been hidden from Confederation sensors began to hum with activity. Ships larger than anything the galaxy had ever seen started their final preparations for departure. The human military had been waiting for this moment, and they were ready to show the universe what 3,000 years of continuous warfare had taught them about solving problems. The war chief, or was drunk on victory when he ordered the attack on Rigel's system. His fleet had grown from 15 ships to over 200 as word spread of easy prey and rich targets. The Confederation did nothing but talk while his warriors took whatever they wanted. It was time for the biggest prize of all. Rigel's system was one of the Confederation's most important trade hubs. 5 planets full of different species, all working together to build their peaceful civilization. The system's defense force had 30 ships, but they were patrol craft designed to stop smugglers, not fight a real war. When Or's fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, the defenders knew they were doomed. Surrender your worlds and we will kill you quickly, or broadcast to the system's government. Fight us, and we will make your deaths last for days. The Rigel Defense Force chose to fight anyway. Their small ships charged toward the massive fleet, firing their light weapons and hopping to buy time for civilian evacuations. They lasted 18 minutes before the last defender exploded against Or's flagship. With the defenders gone, the fleet spread out across the system and began bombarding the inhabited planets. They targeted power plants, communication centers, and spaceports first. Then they started hitting cities, just to watch them burn. On the 5th planet, 10 million people huddled in shelters as plasma bolts turned their world into a burning wasteland. In the capital city of New Geneva, Mayor Torres sent desperate messages to anyone who would listen. Please, someone help us. They're killing everyone. Please. The Confederation Council held another emergency session, but their response was the same as always: more meetings and more delays. The 3rd Fleet was finally authorized for combat operations, but they would need 2 days to reach Rigel's system. By then, everyone would be dead. Admiral commanded the relief force from his flagship, the Stellar Dominion. He was a veteran officer who had spent his entire career in peacetime, but he understood the theory of space combat. His fleet was the most advanced military force the galaxy had ever assembled: 72 ships armed with plasma cannons and protected by energy shields that could stop anything. As the fleet raced through hyperspace toward Rigel, Admiral studied the tactical situation. They had superior numbers, but their ships were primitive compared to Confederation technology. The battle would be difficult, but the outcome was certain. They would win because they always won. 3 hours out from Rigel, the fleet's sensors detected something impossible. A massive ship had just dropped out of hyperspace near the battle zone. The contact was enormous, easily twice the size of the Stellar Dominion, but its design was completely unknown. "Sir, the unknown vessel is broadcasting on standard frequencies," reported the communications officer. "Audio only, human origin." Admiral blinked in surprise. "Human, put them through." A calm female voice filled the bridge. "This is Admiral Torres of the United Earth Ship Retribution, responding to distress calls from Rigel's system. We are moving to engage hostile forces and provide assistance to civilian populations." The Admiral stared at his tactical display. The human ship was accelerating toward the fleet at impossible speeds. According to sensors, the vessel was somehow maintaining 3 times the safe velocity for entering a star system. The gravitational forces should have torn it apart. Human vessel, this is Admiral of the Third Fleet. We appreciate your assistance, but you are severely. They have over 200 ships. Recommend you withdraw to a safe distance while we handle the situation. Admiral Tor's response was polite but firm. Thank you for the warning, Admiral. We'll take our chances. Retribution out. The human Dreadnought continued its impossible acceleration toward the fleet. As it approached, the Confederation sensors began picking up details that made no sense. The ship's hull was covered in armor plating that looked crude compared to Confederation energy shields. Strange fins and radiators jutted out from the main structure like the spines of some ancient beast. Weapon pods dotted the hull in seemingly random patterns. But the most disturbing thing was the ship's energy signature. The Retribution's reactor was producing power levels that shouldn't be possible. Whatever drove the human ship was far beyond anything in Confederation technology. War Chief watched the approaching ship with growing amusement. The humans had sent one vessel against his entire fleet. Either they were incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. He preferred to think they were stupid. All ships target the human vessel, ordered. Show them what happens to those who interfere with business. 200 ships turned their weapons toward the Retribution. Plasma cannons that could melt through solid rock prepared to fire. Energy torpedoes that could crack a moon's surface armed themselves for launch. The combined firepower of the entire fleet focused on the lone human ship. The Retribution didn't slow down. At a range of 50,000 kilometers, the fleet opened fire. The space between the ships filled with deadly energy as plasma bolts and torpedoes streaked toward their target. The weapons struck the human ship's hull in a series of brilliant explosions that lit up the darkness like a miniature star. When the light faded, the Retribution was still there. Its hull glowed with absorbed energy, but the ship continued its approach without any sign of damage. If anything, it seemed to be moving faster than before. War Chief felt the first cold touch of fear in his warrior's heart. What kind of ship is that? Admiral was asking himself the same question from his position 50,000 kilometers behind the battle. The sensors had recorded everything, but the data made no sense. The human ship had absorbed enough energy to destroy a small moon, yet it showed no damage at all. The Retribution was now close enough for detailed scans, and what the sensors revealed was impossible. The ship's armor was somehow converting incoming energy attacks into additional power for its own systems. The more the shot at it, the stronger it became. Then the human ship opened fire. The galaxy had never seen weapons like these. Massive launched projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. Missile pods released swarms of guided munitions that moved like living things. Point defense systems created walls of intercepting fire that could stop anything that came too close. The first ship died in a ball of plasma as a slug tore through its hull at relativistic velocity. The second ship exploded when a guided missile found its reactor core. A third vessel simply vanished when multiple projectiles struck it simultaneously. In 30 seconds, 12 ships were destroyed. The human vessel continued its steady approach, its weapons firing with mechanical precision. Each shot found its target. Each target died. War Chief screamed orders at his fleet, but his warriors were already breaking formation. They had never faced anything like this. The human ship fought like a force of nature, unstoppable and merciless. Admiral watched from his command bridge as the Retribution tore through the fleet. His tactical officers were frantically trying to understand what they were seeing, but their computers couldn't explain the human technology. "Sir," the sensor operator reported, his voice shaking, "the human ship is operating at less than 60% power output. Their reactor readings indicate they have significant reserves remaining." The Admiral felt the galaxy shift beneath his feet. Everything he thought he knew about military power was crumbling before his eyes. If the humans could build ships like this, what else were they hiding? War chief, or had ruled through fear and violence for 20 years. He had conquered 12 star systems and enslaved millions of beings. His warriors followed him because he was the strongest, the most brutal, and the luckiest fighter in history. But as he watched his fleet die around him, or felt something he had never experienced before, complete helplessness. The human ship moved through his formation like a predator among prey. Its weapons fired with impossible accuracy, each shot calculated to cause maximum damage. The launched projectiles that traveled so fast they appeared as brief flashes of light. When they hit a ship, the vessel simply ceased to exist, torn apart by kinetic energy that no shield could stop. "How are they doing this?" or roared at his tactical officer. "Their weapons are primitive, metal slugs and chemical explosives." His subordinate's claws trembled as he read the sensor data. "War Chief, the projectiles are moving at 20% of light speed. At that velocity, even a small piece of metal carries the energy of a nuclear weapon, and their targeting systems. They're predicting our movement patterns before we make them." The Retribution's missile swarms were even more terrifying than its. Thousands of small projectiles spread out from the human ship like a cloud of angry insects. Each missile had its own targeting system and could change course multiple times during flight. The point defense systems, designed to stop energy weapons, were useless against physical projectiles that moved with such intelligence. Or watched 20 more of his ships die in as many seconds. The human vessel hadn't even slowed down. It continued its steady advance, its hull glowing brighter as it absorbed the desperate energy attacks of his remaining forces. "All ships ramming speed," or commanded. "If we cannot destroy it with weapons, we'll crush it with our hulls." 30 ships changed course and accelerated directly toward the Retribution. It was a suicide attack, but it was the only tactic they had left. Perhaps the human ship's armor could absorb energy, but it couldn't survive being rammed by 30 warships simultaneously. The human response was swift and brutal. Point defense turrets across the Retribution's hull swiveled to track the incoming ships. Instead of the light pulse weapons most species used for close defense, the human systems fired solid projectiles at incredible rates. The space around the Dreadnought filled with a wall of metal moving at hypersonic speeds. The first ramming ship disintegrated when it hit the defensive barrier. Its hull was shredded by thousands of impacts that turned the vessel into expanding debris. The second ship lasted 3 seconds longer before suffering the same fate. One by one, the suicide attackers were torn apart before they could reach their target. Admiral watched the slaughter from his command bridge, his energy field flickering with shock and disbelief. His tactical computers were recording everything, but they couldn't provide explanations for what they were seeing. The human weapons shouldn't exist. The armor shouldn't work. The targeting systems shouldn't be that accurate. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the human ship. It's directed at both us and the fleet." "Put it through," ordered, though he wasn't sure he wanted to hear what the humans had to say. Admiral Tor's voice filled both command bridges, calm and professional despite the battle raging around her ship. "This is Admiral Tor's of the UES Retribution to all vessels in the Rigel system. Forces, you have 30 seconds to surrender or withdraw from this system. Any ship that complies will be treated according to the Terran Convention on the Humane Treatment of Prisoners. Continued resistance will be met with overwhelming force." War Chief or spat at his communication console. "Never. Warriors do not surrender to anyone." But even as he spoke, some of his ship captains were having different thoughts. They had lost over half their fleet in less than an hour, and the human ship showed no signs of damage. Several vessels began broadcasting surrender signals, their crews choosing survival over honor. Or watched in rage as his own warriors abandoned the fight. The human ship accepted each surrender with professional efficiency, transmitting coordinates where the defeated ships should hold position. It was impossible, did not surrender ever. Yet here they were, giving up to a single enemy vessel. The Retribution continued its methodical destruction of the remaining hostile ships. Its weapons never missed, never wasted ammunition, never fired more shots than necessary. Each vessel died to precisely calculated force enough to ensure destruction, but not so much as to be wasteful. Admiral realized he was watching the work of a military machine unlike anything the galaxy had ever produced. The human ship wasn't just winning the battle. It was conducting a textbook demonstration of superior firepower and tactical doctrine. "Sir," his sensor operator called out, "I'm reading massive energy buildups from the human ship. They're charging weapons we haven't seen yet." On the Retribution's hull, new weapon systems emerged from concealed ports. These weren't or missile launchers. The energy signatures suggested something far more advanced weapons that made plasma cannons look like children's toys. War Chief had 43 ships left from his fleet of 200. They clustered around his flagship, their hulls from near misses and debris impacts. His warriors looked to him for leadership, but he had no answers left. "War Chief," his navigation officer whispered, "perhaps we should consider withdrawal. We can rebuild, find new weapons, and return when we're better prepared." It was the first sensible thing anyone had said in hours, or looked at the tactical display, seeing his remaining ships arranged in a defensive formation that wouldn't last 5 minutes against the human Dreadnought. His pride screamed against retreat, but his survival instincts were stronger. "All ships," he growled into his communicator, "emergency hyperspace jump. Random courses. Scatter and regroup at the fallback coordinates." The surviving ships vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind the wreckage of their comrades and the burning planets they had been bombarding. The Retribution made no move to pursue them. Instead, it changed course toward the inhabited worlds, where millions of civilians were still trapped in shelters. Admiral's fleet arrived in the system just as the last ships fled. His sensors showed the aftermath of the battle debris fields where enemy vessels had died, and one impossible human ship moving toward the planets with obvious rescue intent. "Open a channel to the human vessel," ordered. He needed to understand what had just happened and, more importantly, what it meant for the future of the galaxy. Admiral Tors appeared on his main screen, her uniform crisp and her expression professional. Behind her, the bridge of the Retribution hummed with efficient activity. Human crew members worked at stations that looked both familiar and completely alien. "Admiral," Tors said with a slight smile, "thank you for responding to the crisis. I apologize that we arrived first. We were conducting training exercises in a nearby system and received the distress calls." Training exercises. The woman had just destroyed most of a 200-ship fleet, and she called it training exercises. "Admiral Tors," began carefully, "your ship's performance was remarkable. I confess that Confederation intelligence may have underestimated human military capabilities." Tors' smile widened slightly. "We prefer to let our actions speak louder than our words, Admiral. Now, if you'll excuse me, we have rescue operations to coordinate. There are still people down there who need help." The channel closed, leaving Admiral alone with questions that would change the galaxy forever. The emergency session of the Galactic Confederation Council was the largest gathering in 3,000 years. Representatives from every major species packed the Great Chamber on Nexus Prime. Even the normally reclusive Void Walkers had sent an observer, their shadowy form flickering in the far corner like a living piece of darkness. Ambassador stood at the center podium, his energy field dimmed with exhaustion. He had spent the last week reviewing battle footage, sensor data, and intelligence reports from Rigel's system. Nothing he had learned made the situation any clearer. "Honored delegates," he began, We are gathered to address the implications of recent events in the Rigel system. As you know, a single human vessel engaged and defeated a fleet of over 200 ships in approximately 37 minutes. Murmurs filled the chamber. Even a week later, the numbers seemed impossible. They weren't the galaxy's strongest military force, but they were experienced fighters with decent technology. Losing an entire fleet to one ship was beyond comprehension. Trade Master N spoke from his position in the section. Has anyone been able to explain how their weapons work? Our best scientists are baffled by the energy readings. Harmony of Thoughts, the representative, responded with a series of harmonic tones that translated as deep confusion. The kinetic weapons violate no physical laws, but their targeting accuracy suggests computational systems far beyond our understanding. The human ship predicted movements with 97% accuracy across the entire engagement. That was the part that troubled everyone most. The raw firepower was impressive, but the precision was terrifying. The human ship had fought like it knew exactly what every enemy vessel would do before they did it. Director Sarah sat in the Human Observer section, listening to the debate with the same polite attention she had shown for months. Her expression revealed nothing, but several ambassadors noticed that she no longer looked like a student trying to learn from her betters. There was something different in her posture, a quiet confidence that hadn't been there before. Ambassador activated a holographic display showing the battle's tactical progression. The human vessel, designated UES Retribution, demonstrated capabilities that challenge our understanding of current technology. Its armor somehow converted incoming energy attacks into additional power. Its weapons achieved destructive effects using purely kinetic principles. Most disturbing, its reactor output suggests it was operating at less than 60% capacity throughout the engagement. The chamber fell silent. If the human ship had been holding back during such a devastating victory, what were its true capabilities? Council leader cleared his throat. Perhaps it's time we heard directly from our human colleagues. Director, would you be willing to address the Council's concerns? All eyes turned to the human representative. She stood slowly, moved to the speaker's platform, and looked around the chamber with calm, measuring eyes. When she spoke, her voice carried none of the deference that had marked her previous speeches. Honored delegates, I appreciate your interest in recent events. Earth is proud that we could assist in resolving the crisis and protecting innocent lives. Director, interrupted Ambassador, we're hoping you can explain how your people achieved such remarkable results with apparently primitive technology. Smiled, and for the first time, several ambassadors realized it wasn't the smile of a junior species seeking approval. It was the expression of someone who knew far more than they were revealing. I think there may have been some misunderstandings about human capabilities, she said carefully. When we first made contact, Earth chose to reveal only our older technologies. We believed it would be diplomatic, to appear less advanced than we actually are. We wanted to avoid making anyone uncomfortable. The silence stretched as the implications sank in. Trade Master N was the first to find his voice. Are you saying that everything we've seen from humanity has been deliberately outdated? The UES Endeavor was built using technology that Earth stopped using about 50 years ago, confirmed. We thought it would be appropriate for first contact. We've found that advanced civilizations sometimes react poorly when they discover a newcomer has superior technology. Ambassador's energy field flickered wildly. Superior technology. Director, are you suggesting that humanity is more advanced than the Confederation? His expression became carefully neutral. I'm saying that Earth has been preparing for contact with galactic civilization for much longer than you realize. We've been monitoring Confederation space for over a century. We know about your political structures, your military capabilities, and your technological limitations. The chamber erupted in shocked voices and angry energy discharges. Several ambassadors demanded to know how humans had achieved such surveillance without detection. Others wanted to know what else humanity was hiding. Waited for the noise to die down before continuing. Earth has established colonies in 47 star systems beyond Confederation borders. Our industrial capacity currently exceeds that of any 3 Confederation species combined. The UES Retribution is classified as a light patrol vessel in our fleet structure. If the previous revelation had caused an uproar, this one created panic. A light patrol vessel. The ship that had destroyed an entire fleet was considered small by human standards. Harmony of thoughts produced a complex series of tones that translated as mathematical impossibility. Your species has been spacefaring for less than 200 years. The industrial development you describe would require of expansion. Earth has been at war for most of recorded history, replied simply. We learned to build quickly, efficiently, and in large quantities. We also learned that the best defense is overwhelming offensive capability. These lessons served us well when we reached the stars. Ambassador was beginning to understand the true scope of what they were dealing with. How many ships does Earth possess? That's classified information, said with an apologetic shrug. But I can tell you that the Terran Defense Force maintains 12 fleet groups of various sizes. Each group is capable of independent operations across multiple star systems. The numbers were staggering. If each fleet group contained even 50 ships of Retribution-class capability, humanity possessed military power that dwarfed the entire Confederation. But wasn't finished. Of course, that's just our military fleet. Our colonial defense forces, merchant marine, and exploration services operate additional vessels. We've found it necessary to maintain significant reserves given the uncertain nature of galactic politics. Trade Master N raised a trembling appendage. Why are you telling us this now? What does Earth want? His expression softened slightly. Earth wants the same thing we've always wanted: peaceful coexistence with our galactic neighbors. We revealed our capabilities at Rigel because civilians were dying, and the Confederation seemed unable to respond effectively. We hope this demonstration will convince aggressive species like the to reconsider their behavior. And if they don't, asked Council Leader, then we'll convince them again, as many times as necessary. The simple statement carried unmistakable implications. Humanity wasn't asking for permission to act. They were informing the galaxy of decisions they had already made. Ambassador struggled to process the new reality. Director, what does this mean for humanity's relationship with the Confederation? We'd like to upgrade from probationary observer status to full membership, said with a return of her diplomatic smile. Earth believes we've demonstrated our ability to contribute meaningfully to galactic security and prosperity. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy watched as humanity emerged from the shadows. Human ships began appearing in systems that had never seen them before. Construction yards that had been hidden behind sensor barriers revealed the true scale of Earth's industrial might. Archaeological evidence surfaced showing that humans had been exploring beyond their home system for much longer than they had claimed. The hegemony, meanwhile, seemed to have lost all interest in raiding Confederation space. War chief or surviving forces remained in their home territory, apparently focused on defensive preparations rather than offensive operations. Other aggressive species across the galaxy took notice. Several pirate organizations disbanded overnight. A few warlords sent envoys to Nexus Prime expressing their desire to contribute to galactic peace and prosperity. In his private quarters, Admiral reviewed the latest intelligence reports from Earth space. Long-range sensors had detected construction projects that comprehension shipyards that could build vessels larger than space stations. Industrial complexes that consumed the output of entire star systems, and defense networks that would make invasion impossible. The galaxy had spent 3,000 years believing that peace came from carefully balanced weakness. Humanity was about to teach them that sometimes peace required overwhelming strength. And they were very good teachers.